Hey, I want to get your thoughts. There's a report that the Eagles are going to work out Christian Hackenberg next week. Now, that perks a lot of people's ears up in this area, obviously, with the Penn State ties. But he's kind of a polarizing figure in this draft class. So give us a little insight on Hackenberg and whether or not you think he's a guy worth taking a crack at if it's a third or fourth rounder.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a mid-round pick. He hasn't really wowed NFL people during this process, the interview process, because he's placed a lot of the blame at the feet of James Franklin, and he's a guy who was better basically as a freshman under Bill O'Brien, and he got possibly worse. So a lot of it had to do with the fact that the change in philosophy and he better fit traditional pro system. And if you think about it, that's a good thing because that's what he's coming into. But when you talk about that particular position and the fact that it demands leadership by the very nature of it, NFL teams are turned off when you try to pass the buck. And that's what's been going on. So I think he needs to learn from that. He's obviously got talent, and it's a developmental thing. He's not going to step in and play right away. So we talked about the Eagles and them doing their due diligence. They're basically talking to every quarterback under the sun, and Hackenberg definitely deserves to be one of them. And if they don't feel one of the top three is the way to go, then everybody's in play, and he's one of those guys.
But, John, is he a guy that 2 or 3 years down the road, can he develop into a starter? Does he have that kind of talent?
Well, I think if you look at the kid who was under Bill O'Brien, a lot of people thought he had the skill set to develop into an NFL player. There's no question about that. The fact that he has gotten progressively worse is never a good thing. And, again, you can blame it on the system. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. But anytime you regress as you go along, that sets off warning signs, and I think a lot of people have looked at that around the league and said, I don't know. But he certainly has the skill set to be a backup in this league at some point. I don't think there's any question he's going to make an NFL roster. The question is, can he develop into a starter? In what I saw the last 2 years at Penn State, he didn't look like an NFL starter to me, but we'll see if he can sort of recover from that.
You mentioned warning signs. No bigger warning sign than kind of throwing your coach under the bus. There were reports that he kind of blamed James Franklin for his decline the last couple of years. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, not kind of. He did, and that's what I was mentioning with the interview process. And I wrote about it a couple of days ago at today's Pigskin, because there are a number of NFL people talking about it, and the fact that it's just not what you do. And it's worse at that position. I mean, if you hear a wide receiver or a defensive end, pick the position. They never if you want to knock a coach. It's never good, but you can overlook at it. At the quarterback position, you have to understand you're the leader of the team on the field. You're the face of the franchise in a lot of ways, and that comes with responsibility. And one of those responsibilities is to sort of deflect things. And you get all the accolades when things are going well, and in turn, when things are not going well, you're supposed to shoulder a lot of that blame. And the last thing NFL scouts want to see is a kid who's going to blame everybody else but himself. So it is a concern. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and, he's a guy that came in, as the number one overall prospect in the country, and it seems like almost like when a guy gets drafted number one overall in the draft, you keep giving that guy more opportunities. You wonder if he's in that same boat, or does he legitimately, have some questionable coaching at Penn State. I think he's a very polarizing and intriguing prospect in this draft, but, a couple of years ago, they took a flyer on Matt Barkley, and that didn't work out. I mean, is it to the point where he's just a waste of a pick if you take him in the fourth round, or is he a guy, as Pete has, a legitimate developmental player, which we've heard that name a couple of times out of the mouth, that word a couple of times out of the mouth of Doug Peterson?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a legitimate guy to take a chance on, especially if you can go a little bit lower than that. fifth, sixth round pick, then I think it's good value.
You think he falls down that far?
It's a possibility, and
wow.
Because people are turned off by the way he's done certain things, and part of the reason is there's no question he did not get solid coaching at the college level when James Franklin got there. There's no doubt about that, and people understand that. And I think if he sold it in a different way, and kind of say you've dealt with a lot of NFL-type situations as far as adversity goes at Penn State, because remember, there's a lack of scholarships there from the scandal days that he had to deal with. He played in the pro system under Bill O'Brien, and then it got turned on its head under James Franklin. So he's had to deal with a lot. And if he spun that the right way and said, "Look, it was a difficult situation. I came through it. I did the best I could. I learned from it," I think it would have been a positive for him. Unfortunately, you hear from people in this league, and he spun it in the other direction. Said, "Hey, things were going great under Bill, and I got bad coaching from that point forward," and that turned some people off. So he's got talent. I think somebody will take a shot at him. Probably sooner than that in the fourth, maybe even the third round because of the desperation of this league. But if he does continue to fall and you get him fifth, sixth round, as I said, then it becomes really, really good value.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If he falls in the fifth or sixth round, I certainly think it's worth taking a flyer on. I'm surprised that that you think he might fall down to that point. However, strange things happen in that NFL draft. What do you think about Cook? His name, I'm sure, will come up at some point. He hasn't come up yet for the Eagles, but it seems that anybody else who played quarterback and has a recognizable name has been worked out by them. But he was a guy, John Connor Cook, Michigan State, many people thought could have been a first-rounder and maybe the best quarterback in the class, and it seems like he's vanished.
Yeah, he was a guy who was talked about being a potential number one overall pick if you go way back to the beginning of the season. And some of the similar situations. I mean, one of the not, you can say this is fair or not, I think it's a little unfair, is people, their antennas went up when he wasn't named the captain at Michigan State. And that's rare for a quarterback is automatically assumed to be a captain. But if you look deeper into it, that particular team had a lot of veteran leadership, had a lot of guys who had already been in that type of situation, and they kind of rotated captains in and out. So I didn't think it was as big as a deal as some made it out to be. So there's a guy who I think is going to be tremendous value if he falls into the second round, which I think he's likely to do. But if you get a quick run, we talked about that yesterday, Mike. If you get a quick run of those top three quarterbacks, and they're all off the board in the top 10, I could see a desperate team taking Connor Cook in the first round.
Wow. It's funny because, okay, so let's go run down. Goff they've met with Wentz, they met with Hogan, they met with Paxton Lynch today. If Paxton Lynch is on the board at number 8, you feel more comfortable taking him or waiting for a Connor Cook, Christian Hackenberg?
Well, it depends where you get him. If you get Connor Cook in the second round, as I said, I think that's tremendous value. I think if you get Hackenberg later in the fifth round, say that's tremendous value. If you have to reach for Christian Hackenberg as a third-round pick, I don't know if I like that value. So it all depends on where you can get these guys. And generally, quarterbacks tend to go a little bit higher than where they're projected, simply because so many teams, as I mentioned, are desperate at that particular position. So you have to be very, very cautious, and that's my concern at number 8, because it really hinges on if somehow Jared Goff falls to the number 8 spot and all the dominoes fall, you take it and you're happy with it. And I think that's an excellent pick. As I said, I don't think there's any way in the world Wentz falls that far, no matter what happens. And then you talk about Lynch. So he's the linchpin. Is he worthy of that pick? I don't necessarily think he is. And that's a difficult decision for the Eagles to make, because this is an organization that has used quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback since Donovan McNabb ran his course in this town. And Jeffrey Lurie has put his foot down and said he wants the answer. And is it going to be this year? Are they going to force the issue? That's where you get paid the big bucks to make the difficult decisions.
Eagles insider John McMullen with us. John, I saw your piece on 97.3 ESPN.com about UCLA running back Paul Perkins. He's going to visit Philadelphia for a pre-draft visit in the coming days. What area of the draft would you see him going?
He's a mid-round guy. Most people project him to be a third or fourth-round pick, but obviously it's a position of need for the Eagles, and a lot of people have speculated that Zeke Elliott can go at number 8 overall to Philadelphia. In fact, if you round up all the mock drafts, he's probably the one guy you see most often as the most logical fit. I don't believe the Eagles will take him at number 8, but they need help at the running back position, and this is a kid that's a good indication as they're bringing him in. A lot of people have mentioned the name Jamal Charles because he looks like him physically. Obviously, he's not that type of talent. But Doug Peterson has a comfortability factor with that type of running back. So you can understand the interest they have in him. And to me, it's a good value. And if you can get a kid like that in the third or fourth round, because he projects, at least in a committee-type situation, of playing pretty early.
The fact that Howie was so willing to talk freely about Elliott already, is that a smokescreen to you, or does that show legitimate interest in your mind? And how much interest do you think the Eagles do have in him?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the classic smokescreen, because I don't think they do have a ton of interest in him at number 8 overall. That's not to say they don't think he's a very good player. I think everyone can stipulate that he's a really good running back and he's going to be a first-round pick. But I think people look at the situation here, and DeMarco Murray is obviously gone. I think it's pretty evident this team has no real interest in moving forward with Ryan Matthews as the starter. He's been on the trade block himself, and his injury history, basically prohibits you counting on him as a starter. So they're going to have to address the situation at some point in this draft. So if you can sort of feign interest in Ezekiel Elliott at the top of the draft, it'll help you, especially in this situation if you're really trying to go after one of those quarterbacks. Putting up the smoke screen is not necessarily a bad thing to do.
John, looking back at some NFL news and notes here with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter. And, of course, you can read his national coverage at today's pigskin.com. Some interesting news here concerning some running back. It looks like the Dolphins are the Eagles of the draft process looking for quarterbacks. They're looking for running backs. Seems like far and wide. They're trying to land somebody out there. You wonder if they would have called the Eagles for DeMarco Murray at some point, or maybe even Ryan Matthews was on the block here. But it looks like they could possibly, they just signed Isaiah P., but they could be possibly getting one of those backs possibly in Kansas City as well. You wonder if they, who were at 8, will end up with Elliott at 13.
Yeah, it's a possibility. And now Davis is on the trading block in Kansas City. And, hey, that's also because Doug Peterson's familiar with him. That might make sense for the Eagles. And the Dolphins had Arian Foster in earlier this week. And they're sort of trying to formulate where he is physically. And I think at some point, if he can pass a physical, he's a logical fit for Miami. So there's a lot of dominoes to fall before you say the Dolphins are going to pick Ezekiel Elliott if he gets to 13. The Eagles at number 8 need a running back. The Giants, a lot of people say they would take Elliott. So there's a lot of spots where he might fall. but there's still a lot of dominoes to sort of shake out. And we talk about it all the time, and a lot of people don't want to just come to the conclusion, and it's a reality, that the position's been devalued. And a lot of these teams are looking at other avenues to fill a weakness at that position because they don't want to waste a first-round pick on a running back.
John, give me your thoughts on Colin Kaepernick. Does he want to get out of San Francisco enough to take about a $5 million pay cut? It's being reported the Broncos want him to take a $5 million pay cut. Does he want out that bad?
I don't think he wants out that bad. He wants out badly, but that's a big pay cut for a guy who doesn't make a ton of money. I don't think people realize that, especially when you put his contract against the contracts that were signed this offseason, specifically Sam Bradford here, your Brock Osweiler's in Houston. They cashed in. And really, if you look at his number, Colin Kaepernick is kind of a bargain. So from the Broncos' perspective, I'm a little bit surprised they're playing such hardball, because if they can get him, even under the existing terms, you could probably get him to take a $1 million pay cut, maybe $2 million. But even if you couldn't, even if you got him at his existing terms, it would still be a bargain. So I think this game of hardball, you might as well play it while you can and see what shakes out, because if he's that desperate to get away from the 49ers organization, maybe you hit a home run and you get both the player and a really, really good contract. But I think when push comes to shove, Denver should just take what they can get and make the deal.
Hey, John, I heard a new name today that I didn't know a lot of. Talk to me more about DeForest Buckner.
He's a really good defensive lineman, and the thing about him is he's versatile. He can play inside and outside, and he's one of those guys that is not a lot of people talk about as potentially a pick for the Eagles at number 8, but I think they should pay a little bit more attention, because that's a position while the Eagles are set as far as the starting lineup and the front four, they have no depth whatsoever. And if you look at what Jim Schwartz wants to do, he needs a rotational system. He's always used it. He's going to have 7 bodies that are going to play. So the Eagles have a need at that position, and to get a kid like that would be a nice fit for that defense.
All right, John, a lot of NFL stuff, including Tony Romo, by the way, tweeting that he thinks he's going to be ready for looking forward to OTAs, a full offseason, so that could throw a wrench into the...
He's going to be ready to break his clavicle again. And that's
we don't wish that upon anybody. Yeah, we don't wish that upon anybody.
When you're talking about a 36, 37-year-old guy, the injuries start piling up and piling up and piling up.
And keep them in mind at number 4. Keep them in mind at number 4, right?
That's what I said. Yep. In my most recent mock draft, I had the Cowboys flipping with Tennessee to get the number 1 spot and taking Carson Wentz. Not to start this year, obviously, with Tony Romo, but you can't count on him moving forward. It's just injury after injury after injury. And it's not just the clavicle, Mike. It's the back, which is chronic, and it's other things. And all of a sudden, the switch isn't going to go off at 37, and you're going to be completely healthy. I think the Cowboys understand they have to get another body in at that position.
All right, John, at JF McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. All good stuff, of course, on the Eagles, and we'll fill in the latest NFL news and notes, which always continues to happen on tomorrow's show. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, John.